Welcome to Prep Life and Happy New Year. Let's talk about this bomb cyclone that's dropping bombs on the country. Technically, it's called the atmospheric rivers now, post-bomb cyclone. But man, this thing has really screwed a lot of things up. If you weren't prepared, then you were hit really hard. Even here in Heber City, Utah, we have feet of snow on the ground. It's only continuing to get worse. Also, massive flooding across the country. Like if you had snow on the ground, now you potentially have rain, and now you just got a lot of water everywhere. San Francisco just broke a 170-year record with the second largest day of rain. That's a total in 24 hours. 170 years ago was that last record. Northern Cali's dealing with it right now. I just saw it on the news. But man, massive, massive issues across the country. Right now in Erie County, which is Buffalo, New York, there's over 37 people that have perished in this storm. 17 plus, it's increased, and it's going to get worse as they start to find more bodies. But 17 plus people were found dead outside of their home. That boggles my mind, guys. Boggles my mind. One gal, 22 years old, was found 6 minutes from her house in her car, in her vehicle, stranded on a residential road, passed away. I don't know if she passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning or hypothermia, but it's just tragic. A lot of us think we're prepared, but we're not. One of the things that we always talk about is this idea that if you're depending on the system, the institution, because of this social collaborative effort that we've bought into, you know, I got taxpayer dollars, we buy into the institutions that provide us support, those institutions are fracturing. I mean, in a disaster or worst case scenario, they don't have the capability nor capacity anyway, so you best be taking care of yourself. Think about self-reliance. Think about how you could manage a lot of these issues on your own. This 22-year-old gal I talked about, she was coming home from work from her commute, got stuck, even had the reception on her cell phone to send a video. 4 hours later, the police still hadn't come. She was talking to her family in North Carolina. This took place in New York. They still didn't come. Nobody can get a hold of her, and they found her dead the next morning. It's tragic. Also, a lot of the issues that we're dealing with now happen to do with accidents, rolling power outages, a lot of things that you're going to see post like the initial hit of the storm, but certainly is going to cost people's lives. What are some things that you could do about it? Well, I don't know, man. I think about right now the fuel that I have run into this home. Right now, I have rolling power outages because I use hydroelectric power from the dam down the road. And this power outage causes my house to drop significantly in temperature. Now, it's 69 degrees typically is what I run my house at. But if the power goes out and it's 30 degrees outside, depending on how my house is insulated, is going to determine how cold it gets. So what kind of reserve power do you have? Do you have generators hooked up to your house? Do you have a portable generator outside of your home? Does your home run on propane as a fuel source for your ovens, your fireplace, etc.? So one of the things to think about is not tethering or putting all your eggs in one basket when it comes to fuel resources. I just went into Tractor Supply, which is right down the road in my house in Heber City, Utah, and bought a propane setup, which is a propane tank that hooks up to a heater that allows me to heat an 1,800 square foot space. Now, some of the dangers when dealing with these type of fuels, including diesel, kerosene, propane, is the fact that there's a carbon monoxide threat. Because, I mean, you can die from the fumes in an enclosed space. Well, have the ability to get air circulated and flowed, but I put that setup in my garage, which is about 500 square foot. Not a huge garage, but man, it heated that space really well. The reason I say this is because not just the fuel for like your stove, for your fireplace, but the idea to keep yourself and your family warm in the harshest of winter conditions. I mean, the power is going to go down in the harshest conditions. So think about that, right? This bomb cyclone has also caused travel issues throughout the country. A lot of people had to commit to the roads. And we already know the statistic, 40,000 people a year die in vehicle accidents. How many more people died on the road? A lot. The statistics always go up with natural disasters because people hit the road. They do silly stuff like driving too fast because speed is the ultimate factor that leads to casualties on the road. And you have 2 million people who get injured. 1 million of those people deal with lifelong injuries. So take your time, stay off the roads if you can, and man, be careful out there. Also, I want to talk about this Idaho suspect. If you've been tracking the news, if you tracked Mike Force podcast, a lot of the stuff that we were talking about had to do with self-protection. We got a self-protection course coming up on the 14th of January. I'm teaching in Heber City, Utah. You can find that on fieldcraftsurvival.com. But self-defense is super important. But man, what do you do when you're asleep and you wake up and there's a bad guy in your room? Man, you better have ready access to self-protection really fast. But also, there's a whole bunch of things you can mitigate the risk to yourself. I mean, the door latches, locks, CCTV cameras, technology, a whole bunch of different stuff. But these 4 Idaho students that were killed in their sleep were killed in their sleep. Supposedly, there's a suspect that just came out of the Pennsylvania area that drove cross-country in the Hyundai that was released all over the news. I think it was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. And he's saying that he wants to get extradited. He's waiving the extradition, meaning he's saying, I'm not going to fight it, so he could expedite him getting back to Idaho to face justice. I mean, the system is going to be, through the jury system, likely with a trial, going to determine how this unfolds. But the Idaho Police Department, the Moscow, Idaho Police Department, is pretty confident that they got their guy. I don't know how confident they are. There's a vehicle. I don't know if there's physical evidence. I don't think there is because they're still asking for the public's help on finding the weapon. But this guy potentially went into, this is suspected, he was just only charged. He wasn't convicted, so he's innocent until proven guilty. Supposedly went in by himself. They think it's just him. They don't think there's an accessory, and killed 4 people in their sleep, while 2 people downstairs, other roommates, slept. The interesting thing is this guy is currently enrolled, I believe, in a location about 10 minutes from Moscow, Idaho, in a PhD program in criminology. I mean, if there was an expert to understand forensic evidence and all the things that have to do with criminal the justice system, he's the guy. It's interesting. You would think that the person responsible for a heinous crime like this who gets away with it is going to be more intelligent because he's going to be more calculated. I mean, it's the reckless ones, the guys who do it in haste, the people who do stupid things because they're not very educated, who make mistakes. This guy made some mistakes, obviously, and now he's being extradited back to Idaho. More to follow on that. It's going to be interesting. I want to talk about mental health on this part of the content because it's so important right now. Day 1 into the new year, New Year's Day, I got notified that a good buddy of mine, Ian Hall, who is a platoon sergeant and a scout unit in the infantry, stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, I got notified that he had taken his own life. Now, it blew my mind. It blew my mind because I looked on Facebook the night before, and he was posting about his family. I think he literally took the photo of his boys and his wife and was saying Happy New Year. The beginning of that sentence said something like, I don't deserve you. And then it said Happy New Year to his babies. It gives me chills up and down my spine. I just lost a good friend of mine, Neil Curry, who is a friend of many, but a friend of mine certainly, who did the same thing on September 10th, actually, of last year. Now, this is tragic, even more tragic because both of these men left children behind. And I don't know what's going on in the country. I could speculate. We could talk about all the different variables that are leading to this outcome. But the bottom line is if you need help, you need to seek help. If you're feeling down and depressed, one, you should understand you're not alone. Right now, if you look at some of the statistics surrounding mental health, which includes homelessness, by the way, which includes drug overdoses. The drug overdose stat for 2021 was 107,000. Like the leading cause of death in a certain bracket of age amongst men. Men especially are being affected by this, and I think it has to do with purpose. I'll speculate and assume, but the stats this year in 2022 are about 110,000. So we're only growing, and exponentially over the year before 2021. A lot of people say, well, it's fentanyl. It doesn't matter what it is. The end state is people are dying in troves. It's not just suicide, but it's drug overdose, it's homelessness, it's crime. It's all these symptoms of a bigger systemic cancer in this country, which is mental health. I think it's a lack of purpose. I think a lot of that has to do with social media, this comparison and contrasting of people online, this inundation of emotionally charged content that's constant, all the pressures surrounding all the things that people have to deal with in life, a recession, the list goes on, guys. But the bottom line is it's taking good people out of our lives, and it's tragic. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. You should know that when you compare homicide rates globally, double that for suicide rates. Double the people who are killed are killing themselves. Most of the time, we are our own worst enemy, and that's tragic. I see a lot of virtue signaling from people, including myself, who wants to get out there and just say things. There's a lot of virtue signaling going on, and when I see that, I don't necessarily think, man, that person's dumb. I think, man, that person's going through some things. Like I've been watching this jiu-jitsu practitioner that I follow all over social media. He is getting hammered with everything that he puts online, and it can't feel good. And it's affecting him. You could see it's affecting him by his post. And what I think in my mind is, man, I don't know you, but stay the hell offline. Stay off social media, because these people are brutal. They will just attack you until you bury yourself into your pillow, hopefully, and not into the ground. I mean, just stay off social media. It's not good for mental health. When you listen to Joe Rogan and people who are very popular, who have these followings, don't look at the comments. Don't look at this toxic stuff. It's not worth it. And a lot of these people are hurting themselves. Guys, let's talk about 3 segments of content that I'm going to bring to you in this format. It includes 3 segments and a book recommendation, but it's going to be EDC, mobility, and homestead. These are the 3 tangible things that we talk about when living your prep life. It's also things that I describe in my book, Prepared, that comes out June 6th of this year. It's 2023. But when we talk about these things, it's the tangible means for you to be best prepared. Now, are things that are not tangible, like situational awareness, like mindset, resilience. These things you can't teach. We'll talk about those things as well. But I want to talk about specific things, especially on YouTube, because I could show you the thing with my hands because you're likely watching me. I mean, you could listen to me if you have that Premiere or Special account where you can let it run in the background, which I know a lot of people are doing. But I want to talk about EDC. So on this episode, we're going to talk about knife selection for EDC. A lot of people have always asked me for my advice on knives, and what I tell them is I am not a knife expert. I have knife experts who work for me. You know, Kevin Estella is a knife expert. I mean, he wrote a book on survival, and that book outlines the best knives. And he's Filipino. I guess Filipinos are very good at like knife stuff. I don't know why that is. I don't know. That's stereotyping, but he tells me like it's a part of their culture. His dad, who was Filipino, taught him about knives as well. So when it comes to knives, take this with a grain of salt. I am speaking to my life experience with knives, but I'm no expert on knives. Josh Smith and guys that I consult with in my network, the owner of Montana Knife Company, these are knife experts. So when we did our knife with Josh Smith and Kevin Estella, we did a hybrid knife, like an EDC, think self-protection knife in conjunction with a knife that could be used for utility. Not necessarily bushcraft, but utility. I'll let the cat out of the bag. I am doing a bushcraft knife with Josh Smith from Montana Knife Company that I hope we will carry in the retail shop exclusively, because it's hard to keep knives in stock with Fieldcraft Survival. I mean, our Montana Knife Company sold out in 1 minute. 1,000 units moved in 1 minute. We did a Stroop knife run that sold out in 24 hours. So it's hard to keep knives, but I want to keep a knife in our retail shop that might be co-located with Black Rifle Coffee in Salt Lake City here in the near future, which will save you the drive up in the snow here in Heber City. But anyways, let's talk about knife selection. So when I look at knives, I break down knives in 3 major categories for me. One is everyday carry. That's the knife that's on your person. That's the knife that you carry every single day, and utility. 2, the self-defense knife, which is going to be also the everyday carry consideration, but it isn't necessarily on your person, like in your waistband or on your pocket. The clip isn't on your pocket. It could be in a fanny pack, like this is our Fieldcraft Free Range American fanny pack. This fanny pack, it could be in here. It could be in your purse. It could be in your backpack. But it's everyday carried, but not necessarily the knife you use for utility. There's a difference, and I'll go over that in a second. And the next knife is going to be the utility knife, whether it's hunting, whether it's on your kit. I'll talk about those and describe them. So let's first off talk about the utility knife, the everyday carry utility knife. So I use a folder as my everyday carry utility. And the reason I break it down into folder utility is because I would not want a folder to also be my self-defense knife. I kind of want my self-defense EDC knife to be standalone. The reason being is, now, again, I'm not the expert. If you ask the experts, a stronger knife is going to be that fixed blade. The folder, because it is folding a piece of metal onto the handle, it's not going to be the best for self-defense. Imagine you're striking somebody and you're penetrating flesh, bone, tissue, all that stuff, and that thing breaks off in your hand, right? You're even penetrating through, like, the consideration for bullets and the consideration for knives shouldn't just be this idea of just, shooting paper, shooting steel. You have to think about the clothing, the obstacles that you are facing when confronted when using a self-defense tool. So imagine you're trying to puncture or trying to combat a suspect during a self-defense scenario in the wintertime, puncturing through a Carhartt jacket or through multiple layers of clothing. This Strider, for example, could probably be used for both self-defense and utility, but I choose to separate the self-defense and only use it for utility. This is one of my favorite utility knives. I don't know the model, I apologize, but they make these. These are folder blades. I also use Benchmade folding blades. They're great as well. So the folder, have one, but have it stand alone as your utility knife. Cutting open boxes, cutting cordage, that kind of stuff. I also prefer a folder that has a serrated blade. This doesn't have one. I prefer that. My Benchmade blades do have that. But yeah, utility is super important, and keep it as a standalone object. It's almost like a flashlight. You could have a flashlight on your self-defense pistol, but also have one standalone so you can use it for utility. Now, if we migrate into self-defense, I'm going to look at something like this. Now, this is the trainer version of the Colonel blade, which is plastic. But, man, this actually could be used for puncturing for self-defense. I would not use that. But I don't know if this is a trainer. This might just be a plastic version of that with the ability to puncture because it's super sharp. This isn't a trainer. Actually, I apologize because that's definitely not a trainer. See if you can see that right there. Where's the focus? There it is. That is not a trainer. That is just Kydex. I pulled it out because I was having this as an example of a trainer that you would use. I have the trainer versions of this, but this has paracord that goes over your neck, and then you wear this here, right? So if you needed to get in somewhere where you couldn't potentially have metal tools for self-defense, this could be an option for you. Now, I don't know if the Colonel blade is still... Actually, it is, I think. I saw it on BCM's website. If you go to Bravo Company Manufacturing website, they have the Colonel blade. But I liked the Colonel blade. And I say liked because I have the Colonel blade. It's not like I have to get it anymore. I liked it, and so I've got it because of the way it handles. Like, you pull it out, and it's standalone. I am not pulling this out to open up a box of mail. I'm pulling this out because I'm trying to defend my life. Now, self-defense blades, I think, are important. But I don't necessarily carry self-defense blades, but it's based on the situation. You know, a lot of times when I'm out and about with my children, I don't have self-defense options like this. But not to say you shouldn't carry these. It just scares the hell out of me, man. You pull a knife and trying to use a blade in self-defense, you better be prepared and trained how to utilize that. So if you get a self-defense option like a Colonel blade, get it and train it. Now, there are a couple people in the world that I would trust to train with fixed blade or in self-defense blades. When I was a kid growing up in ninjutsu and martial arts, I did train self-defense blades, but they were like katanas, right? It was a Japanese martial art, so we're using katana blades. This is very different. There are a lot of new guys coming out of the global war on terror, especially in special operations, where this might have been, you know, the third tier of self-defense when your primary and secondary went down in a self-defense scenario in combat. So get it, but also get the training for it. Now, when we migrate and we talk about utility, I mean like hunting. I mean like the fixed blade on your kit. So here is a Strider knife. This thing is massive. Look at this thing. It's a beautiful knife. I mean, this thing was sent to me by Strider. Come here, where's the focus? There it is. Bam. This was sent to me by Strider when I was deployed in Afghanistan. And I'm very thankful for this because I couldn't afford this as a sergeant in the Army. But they sent me this MT mod. This knife I carried in this handmade sheath in combat for a decade. I had this on my kit, but most of the use of this was used for utility off my kit. Cutting flex cuffs, cutting through obstacles, prying open doors, whatever it may have been. So luckily for me, I never had to use a knife in combat, but I carried this in utility on my body armor. If you have kit, you should have or a battle belt, you should have a standalone fixed blade on that kit at all times. Man, I don't know. You know what I just thought about? I don't know where my Dan Winkler knife is at. I haven't seen that thing in a long time. Anyways, I digress. That thing's usually on my battle belt. I haven't seen it in a while. Have a fixed blade option. Now, for hunting, the utility is very different. I have usually a folder on my person, on my body for everyday carry, but I also carry a knife like this for skinning. This is a Montana knife. I think Montana knife makes the best utility knives for hunting. It's kind of the origin story of some of the knives that they carry. The goat, it's a great one if you can keep it, if you could find it, man. Those things are hard to get. Apparently, they're keeping those in stock. Check their website. I think they're going to retain those in stock, according to Josh. But having the right knife for the right job. I mean, if you're doing fowl hunting or upland bird hunting versus deer, elk, the list goes on, you might have a different knife. The cool thing about knives is, guys, this is an excuse here. You could never have too many. The realistic, like with self-defense tools, period. People ask me, what's the perfect everyday carry pistol? There isn't one. I mean, I have a Glock 43 inside of this fanny pack. I'm sorry this isn't in stock. It will be in stock very soon, probably next week. I apologize for that. I keep talking about it, but it's not in stock. But I have a Glock 43 because it's slimline, it's slender. In different bags, I'll have a SIG. I have an HKP7 a lot of times I carry. I even have revolvers, Ruger LCRs or Smith & Wesson 38 Specials. Why would you carry a revolver? Well, it depends on the scenario. It depends on the environment, most certainly. So knives, the same thing applies. Let's talk about mobility because I just dropped this on YouTube. It's on Mike Glover Actual on the budget build for bugging out. A lot of you guys have asked me, it's like, Mike, I can't afford a $100,000 vehicle. Now, that's grossly exaggerating our content because I don't own a $100,000 vehicle. I own a 2008 Dodge Ram, which I talk about in doing the bug out challenge from Phoenix to Canada. I did that a couple years ago. I also have a Land Cruiser, 2006 Land Cruiser. I bought that vehicle for $20,000 from a guy in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, I have upgraded and outfitted the vehicles, but nowhere near $100,000, guys. The point is, you can get into a bug out rig, a capable vehicle on a budget. You just need to be guided. So I'm going to do that. I just pulled my TJ out of the lawn. I was going to say out of storage, but my lawn is my storage after it snowed a couple feet. And I want to walk you through some of the principles that I apply in building out a bug out platform. Let's talk about the top three. Number one, fuel. Look, guys, if you have a really cool rig that's capable, it could be a Subaru, it could be a Honda Civic with the right equipment. If you don't have any fuel in the vehicle, then you don't have any capability because it's just a dead weight if it's out of gas. A lot of these people who died in New York, I think sadly passed away from carbon monoxide poison because they had their exhaust covered by snow, and that exhaust flowed back into their vehicle. What they were doing was using their vehicle smartly as insulation, protection from the elements. So that's smart, but you can't forget that if the exhaust is covered, you potentially will die. So certainly have a plan to bug in, to stay in your vehicle until help potentially arise, but also have a plan to displace. If you have fuel in your vehicle, right now, ask yourself how much do you have in your vehicle. If it's less than half a tank, shame on you. Always keep half a tank or more in your fuel tank. I know some people that will let it get down to E and then fill it up each and every time. Well, if you let it get to half and fill it up each and every time, you never have to worry about this, especially in a disaster where you're going to need the fuel. Number two, I would say most important is first aid and survival. Having the kit in your vehicle to be able to sustain life for 72 hours or more, 72 hours at a minimum, or more, is hugely important. But first aid is first. Always have first aid to be able to treat injury and trauma, especially that deals with vehicles, like burns. You're going to see, because there's a fuel source, because it's a vehicle, you're going to potentially see those type of injuries. I think on Fieldcraft Survival, we have a mobility kit. It's a mobile trauma kit that we use that is more robust than your standard or your average kit. Have that. Also have survival. Survival is super important because outside of the staples like making a fire, shelter, water, food, signal, all of that stuff, that is going to be very important because you might have to build the fire right next to your vehicle to retain your body temperature because your car ran out of fuel. You need to be able to sustain your survival for an extended period of time. Also have the go bag to displace with that equipment if you ever have to leave that vehicle behind. That's super important as well. And last but not least, because there's way more than this, emergency communications. A lot of people forget that your cell phone, I mean, think about this 22-year-old girl that I keep referencing. Her cell phone was good enough because she recorded herself in the situation, reached out for help, but then ghosted because I believe the infrastructure failed or she passed away. Now, the system that your cell phone operates off of is the cell phone tower network. That network will not operate without power. So what do you have to reach emergency communications or even to monitor emergency comms? You know, a lot of people are like, oh, ham radio, I don't want to get my license. Guys, nobody in the federal government is coming after you because you have your ham radio license. Nobody cares. I don't care if you get your license or not. A lot of experts that are ham radio nerds, and in fact, American Contingency, they're experts at this, because we have the ham radio network. If you go to AmericanContingency.com, you could find that. But they will tell you that the reason it's important to take the course and take the test is because you learn about ham radio, or just be disciplined enough to do it yourself. The cool thing about ham radio is you could monitor ham radio. And even if you learn it, don't take the test. If you have it, you could monitor emergency traffic, but also in the blind, communicate SOS or, hey, I'm in trouble. And trust me, ham radio network nerds across the country are monitoring that. And I think that plugging it into your vehicle, getting the benefit of the amplification and increasing your wattage, increasing your power, meaning your transmission and your receiving capability is super important. Also, have SAT capability in that vehicle. You know, if it's an InReach, if it's a Garmin, if it's one of those handheld devices, that's fine. Just keep it in your vehicle when you're going out and about, because that might mean the difference between getting your signal out or getting your transmission out, SOS, I need help, or not. Also, Homestead. Let's talk about Homestead. Now, what I'm dealing with in my own backyard is trying to manage a micro homestead of goats, chickens, ducks. I got a steer, I got a cow in my pasture, and feeding them and taking care of them through a very disastrous storm that's affecting a lot of people. But I'm prepared. So I have the propane, so I have the extra fuel, so I have the snow plow and snow blower. All of those things are important. I have heated systems that allow me. It's a heated water tank that I could keep the water flowing to these animals to provide me with substance. I mean, my ducks and my chickens lay eggs that feed my family. According to Utah, eggs are up 49%, mostly because of this bird flu and them jumping the gun and murdering chickens throughout the country, which is decimating supply chains. So eggs are up. I need that egg to feed my family. Yeah, sure, I can go to Walmart, but I'm trying to live a more self-reliant means. So you need to be prepared. So take the precautions in advance. Expect a lot worse weather here in the near future. All of these patterns, it's funny, these things are happening during the time that everybody's talking about global warming, and it's like the coldest it's ever been. Continue to track the weather, because supposedly it's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot wetter. I mean, there's earthquakes that are being triggered right now in Northern California. Expect these disasters to take place and be prepared for it. Lastly, let's talk about the book recommendation. I know some of you guys who are nerds like me that follow this preparedness lifestyle know the Foxfire book. There's a series, I believe they're up to number 8. Hog dressing, log cabin building, mountain crafts and foods, planning by sign, snake lore, hunting tales. It's a fun book that you could have with your family, but it's also a great reference when the power goes out, or just reading period, for developing your own homestead and your own levels of preparedness. Guys, I wanted to give you that book recommendation. Pick it up. Pick 1 through 8 up. They're pretty reasonable right now online. You can actually find them on eBay, which is where I found most of mine. And I've been gifted some of these, and thank you so much for that. Guys, you could find the link to subscribe to my newsletter down below. That link is important because when the grid goes down and we can't communicate to you because, I don't know, the government suppresses us, we get our Shopify, our website, our e-commerce all shut down, which has happened to us before, we have the ability to manually email you. And if you're on my email list, you also get notification of all the things, including the deals on products, the training, and all the news on everything that the company does in preparedness. I got a book tour coming up June 6th. I'm excited about that. I'll be in Seattle, not Seattle, Washington. I don't like saying I'm going to be in Seattle. Northeast of Seattle at Greg Anderson's place in Granite Falls, Washington, for sold-out courses this Saturday and Sunday. But also on the 14th, I'm teaching self-protection in Heber City, Utah. Track all those links. I appreciate you guys, and make sure you guys always live your prep life. Till next time. Peace out.